now streaming because my friend, Goblin, told me to start streaming. And so, I am now streaming. I was watching their stream, and they said that they were going to raid me. So, we'll see how that goes. I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to do a song or read something again. Because a song definitely sounds fun, but, you know, a good reading would also be pretty nice. Let's see. There's like a lot of like really nice and fun songs though. I haven't done a song. Last time I did a little reading, and I haven't really gotten any feedback on that, so maybe I should continue just starting with a song to see how I sound. Last time I did. Do 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 do. Oh shoot! I was gonna look up something and now I completely forgot what I was gonna look up. There was a new song that I heard. There's like specific songs that I've sort of been saving because I wanted to do them when certain people joined. Um, Maybe I could just do that. Um, um, I'm thinking about singing something just sort of fun. Um, Actually, let's see if I can find like the instrumental for this. That would be fun. Um, um, do 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 do. Uh, no, I can't find it. Oh well, it's a fun little guitar. Do 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 do. Yeah. Again, all of these songs I highly recommend to actually go and watch the original because I swear to you that my version, my sort of cover of them, is usually quite different because of the way that I have to sing it, basically. Um, but yeah. Am I awake? Am I asleep? Or somewhere in between? I can't believe that you are here lying next to me. Or did I dream that we were perfectly entwined? Like branches on a tree or twigs on a vine. And all those days and months and weeks I tried to steal a kiss. And all those sleep nights and daydreams where I picture this. I'm just the underdog who finally got the girl. And I am not ashamed to share it to the world. Truly, madly, deeply, I am foolishly, completely fallen. And somehow you kicked all my walls in. So maybe say you'll always keep me truly, madly, crazy, deeply in love with you. In love with you. I need to stop doing the little intro song to test the sound because I'm getting raided by my very good friend Goblin here. Hello, welcome with the raid party of 3. Good to see you, my friend. I'm glad to see that you are doing well, in good spirits, and just sort of pursuing what you love and enjoy, and that's really, truly, deeply what life is all about. Is you know, not just doing what you love, but spreading. I will get back to the song, but I wanted to say hi to Goblin and thank him, for being him, pursuing what he's after. And I am going to get into sort of that, um, how I'm pursuing what I'm after, basically. Oh, shoot, that's what I should have sang. Is the Pursuit song. Oh, well. Yeah, sure, I'll sing more. I'll get back to a song you didn't miss much. Should I put coffee and granola on a tray in bed and wake you up with all the words that I still haven't said, and tender touches just to show you how I feel? Or should I act so cool and like it's no big deal? I wish I could freeze this moment in a frame and stay like this. I'll put this day back on replay and keep reliving it. 'Cause hear this tragic truth if you don't feel the same. My heart would fall apart if someone said your name. Truly, madly, deeply, I am foolishly, completely fallen. And somehow you kicked all my walls in. So maybe say you will always keep me. Truly, madly, crazy, deeply in love with you. With love with you. Oh, I hope I'm not a casualty. Shoot, I don't remember how to sing this next part. I hope you won't get up and leave. I hope I'm not a casualty. I hope you won't get up and leave. It may not mean that much to you, but to me it's everything. So this is a song that I learned just sort of randomly getting, recommendations in my music feed. Whereas previously, Truly Madly Deeply was a Cascada song. And of those of you who don't know or remember Cascada, she was the girl that made that very popular hit. Evacuate the dance floor. Stop, this beat is killing me. Hey, it's a DJ, let the music take it underground. That song. But she did do another song. I wanna stand with you on a mountain. I wanna bathe with you in the sea. I wanna lay like this forever till the sky falls down on me. And that song is called Truly Madly Deeply. I don't exactly remember why, because I'm not actually sure if those words were actually said in that song. Let's see. Oh. I'll be your dream, I'll be your wish, I'll be your fantasy, I'll be your hope, I'll be your love, be everything. Oh, that's right. I'll be your dream, I'll be your wish, I'll be your fantasy. Wait. I'll be everything that you need. I love you more with every breath, truly, madly, deep do. I will be strong, I will be faithful, because I am counting on a new beginning. A reason for living, a deeper meaning. This is like so worded. I'm like looking at just sort of the typed out lyrics, so this is a little difficult to read. But yeah, the intro, I haven't like heard it in a long time. I'll be your dream, I'll be your wish, be your fantasy, I'll be your hope, I'll be your love, be everything that you need. I love you more with every breath, truly, madly, deeply, truly mad. See, the problem is that it's hard for me to sing it because when you can electronically like clip it in without it like um so even before she ends like the word fantasy, it begins with like the next verse or whatever. um Actually, I could just play it. You guys should be able to hear this. This is not how I remember it. I wonder if there's another version.
I'll be your dream, I'll be your wish, I'll be your fantasy, I'll be your hope, I'll be your... I love you more with every breath, truly, madly, deeply do.
Yeah, this is not the version that I'm used to hearing. Oh my, wow, that's yeah, that's much slower than what I'm used to hearing. Um,
I'll be your hope, I'll be your love, be everything that you need. I love you more with every breath, truly, madly, deeply do. I will be strong.
yeah, even that is like still slower than what I'm used to. Oh my goodness, I just saw the Omewa Deru song. Um, Omae wa mo shinderu. Anyways, I actually was listening to the Savage Garden version of this a few nights ago because I'm a 90s kid, and even as a kid, this song hit different. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I was born 96, so I wouldn't consider myself a 90s kid, because I would have been 3 uh, in the 90s, basically. Um, but I do feel as though, sort of all of my experience, Nani, um, all my experience with music and other media was sort of, behind. A lot of my parents had music and stuff from previous generations, and that's sort of like how I learned about good music, Huey Lewis and the News, like all that kind of stuff. That's how I sort of got my thing, basically, whatever. Um, insert Matt Damon becoming old man Ryan gif here. I don't know what that is, but all right. Um, and now it's just down to me and you. I've lost the all the other viewers. I was up to 5 viewers, my max, not counting that one time the auto rated we with 70 people. Um, yeah. Mm. Road travel still go bird. Nice to see that you still, are, I guess, interested. And basically, it's just like you two that still sort of tune into my streams every now and then. Yep, Spicy Spixter. Um, I always call them Spike. I don't know why, because I always forget like the spicy part. Anyways, um, I think today I was gonna sort of just go over um, like a very brief overview, like history of me, my experience with art, specifically just sort of the drawing kind, as well as story art, and sort of like my overarching goal in life. If I were to talk about music, it would be way too long, way too many tangents and stories and whatnot. Oh, yeah, actually, I should tell some stories on here, because I do have some fun little stories, but I definitely will touch on some of those later. But I should probably like figure out like more of like what people are interested, rather than just storing random story. At least with starting out here, I am going to be sort of just talking about me, and then hopefully as like the podcast progresses, maybe we get more members, get more of an audience, get more of an actual, you know, idea of what we're going for, we'll be able to discuss topics and questions and whatnot, handle all that stuff better. Um, but yeah, um, just sort of going off of when I was very young, uh, and honestly, it wasn't until about middle school where I actually started to, you know, remember things. I feel like that's about the time when I actually felt as though I got sentience and wasn't, just like watching this creature, um, like in third person mode, basically. I didn't feel as though I was necessarily in control of my person and my body and mind and whatnot, until about middle school, and that's sort of when I was able to, start making conscious decisions and whatnot. Um, and sometimes it does manifest earlier for people. Um, I feel like elementary school probably, but yeah, it was about middle school that I sort of started drawing. You know, when I was I feel like it started with schoolwork and like having you draw stuff. But sort of in free time, I would watch other people drawing, and I would think that that's like super interesting and cool and whatnot. And I wasn't able to come up with my own ideas or anything. So you know, I would see what someone else is drawing, and then I would draw that, and then I would get sidetracked, and I would, build off of it or keep drawing more and whatnot. And then I would get, I would reach a point where I basically stopped. And then I would go and see them and realize that they're also moving ahead. So I would go grab inspiration from that and whatnot. The reason why I'm telling this is because uh, a lot of what I do, um, with art creation and whatnot, is that I'm not good about starting things, but I'm very good with editing, alterating, expounding, building off of something. Um, I'm very much not able to sort of come up with my own ideas and whatnot. Uh, what do you mean shush? What do you mean shush? Um, oh, are you replying to Forrester? Okay. Um, and it wasn't until, like, even now I'm still like struggling with the idea of like going on to Google or whatever and grabbing, like one of those skeletons, or like one of those shape person poses for you're hiding. All right, that's fine. You can lurk. It's all right. Um, and like it always felt bad like tracing something, but that always gave me such a head start, and like it really jumped forward my process, like significant hours of like trying to get like a shape. Not that I can't do it, but trying to visualize it and then manifest it is so difficult unless I have a reference. And most of the time there isn't any good references, but I could like make a hodgepodge or something, and like, or make something work, and then get it basic, and then I can completely reconstruct it and make it better. um, and I remember one of my teachers telling me something like, there's nothing new under the sun, you know but I did realize that, when I was young, straight up copying people, I realized that that was wrong, because that's their stuff, and they were kind of getting upset, like, that I was just copying them. But it's like when you see art on the internet and you think that's really cool, and so you save it to your hard drive or whatever, so you can sort of have it, you can look at it, you can like use it for reference later or something, because it's just cool to like see other people's art. But when you're drawing it, you can't like straight up steal that, because that's their own copy. So when you do it by your own hand, I feel like it's technically yours. And there's lots of ways that you can sort of make things yours, specifically when it comes to like art and whatnot. In music, there's like covers or remixes. There's way to make something your own without like completely butchering it. You can still give homage to something, or say that you took a lot of inspiration or reference from something. I think there's a quote along the lines of mimicry is the greatest form of flattery, or something. But yeah, it's always something that I've sort of struggled with. I've always felt like I've had to come up with my very own thing, and if I don't, then it's it's wrong. But it comes to the point of like, if you make a group of superheroes that correspond to a certain element, and then a color for that element, that may not necessarily be original, but like, who's gonna sue you? Like, is Avatar gonna sue you? Is Power Rangers gonna sue you? Imitation is the highest form of flattery. All right, I thought it was mimicry. My apologies. But yeah, so it gets to the point where you may not necessarily have the most unique idea, but you do have your own perspective on it, your own spin, and you that is creativity, and sharing basically that is enough. And I've gotten like really sidetracked from the story that I was trying to make short. Let's see, where was I? Yeah, I think we were just sort of at the very beginning with in elementary school. I was copying people, but then I would start to, once I had jotted down things that I was interested in, I would work on them later, and it would come in spurts of inspiration, that would sort of get me going and whatnot. Anyone that's ever worked on art, whether it be making a song, or drawing something, or writing, there's always going to be times where you're just not right in the right headspace or mood. There's not a whole lot of ways that you can force it, but there are like little things that you can sort of do to work on stuff. I know that when I was writing, I never wanted to stop, because it was just flowing. And the greatest thing is that once I got going, I felt like I wasn't really working on it anymore. I was just imagining it, and then it was just flowing out onto paper. And sometimes I would be surprised where the story was going, because I hadn't planned it, but I was basically putting these characters in these situations and just watching them, how they would react and interact and whatnot, and it would just sort of come naturally. But when I stopped, it was like hard to pick back up. So what I would do is I would go back to the beginning and like read through it, and spell check it basically. And I usually didn't like redo and restructure a whole lot, just rereading it and spell checking, and then by the time that I got to the end again, I would be ready to just start spurting all that stuff onto paper again. I was typing. I wasn't writing physically. But that's jumping ahead. I wanna give a clear view of this story, where after elementary school, getting into drawing. In middle school, there was a book club that was after school, extracurricular, not. I mean, it was school driven. They would give you a book, and you were supposed to read several pages, and then you would come back, and we would talk about it. And it was really just like extra homework. Um, but the problem was is that it was a fun little book, and this is sort of how I got into reading, because it was a good little book, and I just wanted to read more. But if I ever read more, then I would always forget like the certain pages that we were supposed to have read. So when it came time to discussing it, I didn't remember, and they thought that I just wasn't reading it, but that just wasn't the case. Um, so I think it's about at this point where you know I didn't have any friends. I was getting bullied when I went outside, and I basically just learned that interacting with people was no good. So this is sort of when I went into the mode of staying inside during lunch, just avoiding people, hiding, um, you know, purposely, asking to be in detention, or sometimes, trying to do something just to get detention so that I wouldn't have to go outside. Um, and I would just read books, and that was my escape, and that was fun and interesting. And that's sort of how, where through elementary school I was this brain dead kid that wasn't even aware of his surroundings. I was retarded. I really was. Um, but as I started just sort of reading non-stop, like honestly, because when you're a kid in school, they don't really know how to teach you or anything. So I just was just reading basically. um, but the interesting thing is, I think, I don't remember which middle school it was, but there was one where they started doing the Oaks testing. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the Oaks testing was so interesting and important to me. Because there were class assignments where you could write something out, or you could draw something. And uh, while I was sort of good at drawing, I could never really use it for class. But I had a pretty good vocabulary and concept of grammar and whatnot, because of how much reading I had done, that I was doing well in writing class. And that's literally the only time that I've been well in writing class, was elementary and middle school. And I would do these extra things about writing little stories as a prompt. I remember there was this uh, one science um, one science project where you were supposed to describe the food tract, and you're just supposed to write out a thing, sort of describing how it goes, what connects to what, um, and what each different part does. I wrote a story about it, but not just that. I wrote like a prologue to it, talking about. I should really read this on my channel. That's like a. I'm gonna write that down. This would be a great thing to read. It's so it's so weird, but it's like my first story that I've ever truly written, and it's interesting. And I remember my teachers complimenting me on it, saying like, "You should be a writer." And that's like the first time that I've ever really maybe gotten a compliment that was acknowledgeable. There's probably been stuff like, "Oh, hey, you're doing well," but this was like, "A writer. You should be a writer. You're good at writing." And I was like, "Huh, okay." And then I started pursuing that. I started, you know, I wouldn't, I wasn't pursuing drawing anymore. I was pursuing writing, and this happens back and forth throughout the story. Um, but I would be trying to write and do like extra things basically in school. Outside of school, um, honestly, there was no outside. There's never been an outside of school for me. Every single time I would go home, I would reread the material and try to understand it, in a way that I was able to comprehend it. School just sucked. I had no social life. There was nothing for me outside school. But the I think the next turning point was, I had I was writing stuff down, and it got to the point where, uh, going back to the Oaks testing, there was always the prompts of like you have to write something. Obviously there's like the different tests for the different you know classes and whatnot, and it was usually like reading over material right then and there, and then finding the answer basically. But it was usually like there's a clearly wrong answer, there's an answer that's like not right, and then there's two answers that are very close. There's the correct answer, and then there's an answer that's technically correct but like ever so slightly different. um and that's just sort of how they described it. So it would be like, describing like, Tom throws the red ball into the street, and his dog, uh, Spot, goes and picks up the ball. And then the question is like, what is the boy's name? And then there's one answer that's like, uh, purple. Then the second answer is like, Bluto. And then the second answer, or the third answer, is Spot and Tom. It's like the two names there, so those are like the only useful information. But like the first two answers are clearly not even related to the subject matter. Like there was like one joke answer that wasn't related to anything at all, and then there was one answer that was, you know, probably related to the source material, but not relating to the question at all. And then there was just two answers. And I remember that there was one question that was like, I'm sure there's been like several of these where it was technically correct, and I went and I'm I don't remember what it was. It's not really important. The Trying to think of, Oaks testing. Uh, there was some Oaks testing where you would do some creative writing. Well, it wasn't necessarily creative writing. It was options of trying to show your writing skills, and there was several options. You could do a topic of making a official report. There was also like it was the two options of do like a boring essay or do a creative writing, and I always did the creative writing. um, I think there might have been one where the prompt for the creative writing was just too weird that I just couldn't do it, so I did the report. And that's probably the one that I didn't really do well on. The problem was is that doing the creative writing, I would always go in to the session and I would be thinking, and I couldn't think of anything. and I would go home and not be able to think of anything. And it happened every single time until the last day to do it, and I would get boom inspiration and just start going fast. And I could write fast. The problem was is that there just wasn't enough time, and I would usually get so close and then have to stop, and I would have to come in the extra day and you know, finish it up basically. But yeah. Um. Uh. I don't think there's any like specific one that was like super interesting. I do remember though that there was one that I took inspiration from a song, and I felt bad about that. Um, but it was like so not even related. The song was Moonlight Shadow. Hold on, let me look up the. Uh, yeah, it's by Mike Oldfield. Goodness. The last that ever she saw him, carried away by a moonlight shadow, he passed on worried and warning. Carried away by a moonlight shadow, lost in a riddle that Saturday night. Far away on the other side, he was caught in the middle of a desperate fight, and she couldn't find how to push through. The trees that whisper in the evening, carried away by a moonlight shadow, sing a song of sorrow and grieving. Carried away by a moonlight shadow, all she saw was a silhouette of a gun. Far away on the other side, he was shot 6 times by a man on the run, and she couldn't find how to push through. Um, and that was like a really cool song that I had heard. Um, Obviously, I didn't hear the original version by Mike Oldfield. I heard the the cover by Italo Brothers. Those of you who don't know who the Italo Brothers, you might remember them as the person who made "Stamp on the ground, jump, 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 move it all around, da 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 do." Um, that might be a song you probably know. I don't know. The story that I wrote though is about this uh this brother and sister. The brother's pretty young. The sister was a little bit older. And their parents had gone out for the night, so she was babysitting her little brother. Um, and literally all it was just like a scene of like it starts with them home alone, and she's making mac and cheese, or he wants mac and cheese. She doesn't want to make it for him, uh, but she eventually caves in and makes it for him, and then he disappears, and she's uh, like lost. She's confused. Like it almost turns into a horror movie, and she goes looking for him, and then she looks outside and like bursts through the door and sees him like on the lawn, and then there's like another figure on the lawn, and then I basically did some imagery stuff of like she screams but there's no sound as her brother falls. um oh, actually, I don't think I actually ever finished that one. I think that one I like basically ended right then and there, and didn't get to. I think I just had her like looking out the window, like I described that, and then her just running out the door, and I don't think I finished it. I don't think I had the extra time to finish it. That was like the one that I struggled super hard with, because I had the idea for this story, but I didn't think it necessarily fit the prompt super as well as I felt as though it was sort of cheating that I was taking inspiration from a song that, again, was not even necessarily like super related at all, other than the fact that there's a girl that's upset about her brother who got shot by a man with a gun. You know, it's such a stupid thing to be like concerned about something so little that nobody's gonna know, but I'm gonna know. And I think that's like a problem that I've honestly always had. But yeah, I don't know. It's a it's a weird. Hmm. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it feels like when you, I mean, if you're doing something that's wrong, but you can get away with it, is it really wrong? You know, but it comes down to the moral of it. Do you know it's wrong? Then yeah. Um, but basically the point being, like, you know, people in school would cheat on tests, but you know, if you learned how to cheat and whatnot, that was an actual skill, you know. And honestly, I would go far as to say that that's a valuable skill that you could actually use in life, that, you know, would help you with stuff. And I didn't learn that. I didn't learn how to use like websites and Spark Notes for the longest time until college, honestly, where I legitimately didn't have the time or energy to work on anything, and I had to basically cheat and come up with stuff last minute just to make it through and survive, which is just sad. You know, school should be about teaching and learning, you know, not just showing up and then forcing someone to regurgitate information before forgetting it and, you know, moving on to the next section. Anyways, I wish I could get access to some of my Oaks things that I wrote, because some of them are pretty interesting and I'd love to look at them again, but I don't know if I'd be allowed to. I just don't know. Like, I wouldn't even know who to ask, except maybe go back to the middle school and ask them. Um, but yeah, I think it's at about that time that uh, I was sort of realizing that maybe story writing isn't for me, you know, writing, and whatnot. So I started going back to drawing, but I couldn't draw like I couldn't draw scenes or whatever. I could only do like specific things. So I would do stickmen, you know, and action, like basically person to person. I couldn't draw like these huge elaborate things. And there's a great quote from I believe it's Picasso, or if it's not Picasso, it's some other famous artist, that he said that it's it's not a skill to learn how to become an artist, you know. Everyone is an artist from birth. It's learning how to hold on to that when you grow up and mature, which is the honest truth, you know. Like, everybody can draw, you know, everybody can sing, everybody can dance, you know, everybody can like do all that stuff, but we hold ourselves back because we feel like we don't know how. You know, there's technically no correct way to do it. You know, there are certain rules and science behind like what looks or sounds good or whatever, but honestly, when it comes down to it, it's all about expression. But we like hold ourselves back, and like there's no way that you can draw something cartoony and, you know, stylized when that's not how that actually looks. But if anyone's looked at, like some famous art, or even freaking Has Been Hotel, like that stuff's awesome. But I could never do that because I've conditioned myself to only be able to draw super, realistic, um, which is unfortunate. Um, but sort of the reason why I'm telling this story is because I want to show sort of my perspective and how my abilities have changed over time due to just sort of experiences. So I used to be able to take inspiration from something and just draw expediently, just like these great things. And I basically downgraded to just only being able to draw stick figures. And I could draw like super awesome stick figures. I guarantee you, if you go and ask anybody, ask them about the stick figure drawing portion of their life, I'm almost certain everyone has one. Um, and for guys, it's probably like they drew them fight or whatever. I would actually draw like little scenes. I started getting into flip books, but that was like pretty difficult. It was a lot of fun though, and I wish I had like maintained that, because I was starting to get good, and I probably would have been able to get into animation if I had still stayed attached to that skill. But again, nobody was really complimenting or giving me any sort of I'm trying to think of the right word, basically motivation, support. That's what the word I was looking for. No one was really supporting me, my dreams and goals. They just knew that I was failing in school and was trying to make me do better, basically. Which I needed, but so basically after like drawing small figures and storyboarding and animation, as soon as I let that go, I in high school I basically stopped that. I got into photography, and that's sort of when I understood a lot of science behind imagery and whatnot. Being able to see perspective in shapes, and this is sort of when I got into being really good at drawing backgrounds and physical objects. I can make things look really realistic with only a few lines. And I got really good at understanding how lighting works and being able to make 3D images, but like on two-dimensional. And I still think that like one of the biggest skills that I have in my brain with art and whatnot is being able to see stuff visually, and all that shading, chiaroscuro and whatnot. So the way that I draw now, after I sort of picked up drawing again, was sort of, actually I don't want to say just yet, because I want to continue with the story. But basically I put down drawing and picked up photography, and then after I did photography class for 2 years, I couldn't do anymore. And they said, oh, you could come back and you can hang out, whatever, but it's really not the same. It's a little bit awkward, and technically speaking, I probably shouldn't be in there, because it is messing with me, and it's using their material and whatnot. So I just didn't. So I kind of dropped photography. I did take some classes in digital imaging, and this is when I learned how to use Photoshop, and I really just completely dropped physical drawing altogether. I had done like a couple things where I was trying to get back into drawing, but I just couldn't. So I just ended up like tracing things because I thought they looked cool, because again, this was before I was really into technology. I didn't save images or references or anything. Um, I was just, you know, if I didn't have it physically, it didn't exist, basically. I didn't even have access to YouTube yet, so video games and the internet I was not exposed to yet in high school. Um, but junior year is when I don't know how or why, but creativity kicked in. Oh, actually, I needed to finish with the whole Photoshop thing. I did sort of learn how to draw uh, just using a mouse, basically. And then they brought out the tablets, and I was like, what the heck are these things? And then I tried one, and I didn't really like it at first. But once I sort of got into it, it's pretty good. And then like getting away from that, you realize how spoiled you are. Um, and then after drawing with Photoshop and actually photoshopping images, um, I really like to sort of like take things and just color them. Basically, I would take just black and white things and color them. um, I did learn how to like Photoshop things, like normally when you think of photoshopping, like altering images and whatnot. um, it was kind of like a cool class to learn after taking photography, because I think that sort of helped a little bit. Um, I don't think I learned how to actually like take digital photos from a digital camera and alter them with the you know I did take a class for like making them crisp and clean, just like a normal like professional photographer does. I don't remember where I took that class. It honestly could have been college, but I don't remember. I do remember in um, other than the Photoshop, they showed us how to use the I don't even remember what it's called. It's some other Adobe thing where you basically use lines to make shapes, and uh, that wasn't really for me, but it's like a great thing for actually like creating stuff and whatnot. And I always try to just draw with it, and that just doesn't work. Um, but that's sort of like how you can do animation and whatnot. I did learn how to do animation in Photoshop though, and yeah, I just really wish that I still had like access to Photoshop growing up. Otherwise, a lot of these skills probably would have stayed with me. Um, I think it might have been Illustrator. It was like yellow or let me just look up Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, it's Adobe Illustrator. Yeah. Um, I need to fill up water. Hold on. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, you know. Actually, I should probably ask if any of this is interesting at all to hear. Um, but it's I think it's important to sort of point out like all these steps of like where I'm learning certain skills or losing others, and it's kind of sad like how close I could have been to like actually pursuing being a writer or being an animator. I've always wanted to be an animator. Thank you. Um, I've always wanted to, from the very beginning, I wanted to be an animator. Um, like a two-dimensional animator. Like when you see like Disney films or whatnot. But I realized that like takes so much time and energy, like frame by frame to draw that. It's just like so impossible. And I was like, well, maybe I could just be a cartoonist, like making anime or something. This was before I knew what anime was, um, but like even that, like trying to draw that many, uh, that much for each, amount of dialogue, when I don't know if you guys have seen Tintin or read Tintin, excuse me. But this is sort of where I learned, before anime, is that when you have more text than pictures on a page, the reader is just completely lost. They don't want to hear a monologue or exposition, unless there's like intense atmosphere to follow it, basically. um, and Tintin sort of does that, where they're just sort of standing there like it's a frame, and then there's like so much dialogue that I just completely lose interest, and then I have to stop and think like, okay, if this was an actual novel, which I love novels, would I read this? The answer is obviously yes. And the thing about the the important difference between a novel and a graphic novel is that in an actual novel you get to visualize it yourself, and it really does depend upon the author of how well they can write it, and how that relates to the reader, if they enjoy that style or whatnot. Whereas in a graphic novel, it is this, and then all this other text is just annoying to have to deal with. But basically, getting back to the point of, I didn't think I could be able to do that much art, per panel and page and whatnot, to the stories that I wanted to do. So it was slowly but surely like coming to the realization of like my hopes and dreams were not feasible or possible, and I just slowly started to lose them. Like I couldn't animate, I couldn't even make comics. I I just didn't know what to do or what to pursue in my life, basically. And it wasn't until uh, pretty late in high school that I just randomly got inspiration to just start writing some stuff down. Like I had all these different ideas that I was starting to get that I just had to put down. I just had to make them real and outside of my brain and on paper, and I would just go. Um, and that was like such a beautiful time in my life that I would spend every single moment of my free time just typing. I got my own laptop just so I could just type. But before that, I was like going into the library, with a thumb drive, just like using their Microsoft Word and just typing stuff out, just like tirelessly, during lunch break, during, just basically any moment that I had, I was just writing stuff down. Um, and I think it might have been at about this point that I might have joined a writers club, that was at, the library, the public library, and that was really cool. That's probably like the only social thing that I've ever done. Um, and it was kind of, that's obviously a lot of stories that I could definitely go into. I should write this down. Um, Here. Uh, the story from science class, and writers group stories. Um, and obviously like other story ideas and whatnot. Um, that's just sort of to get started. Um, Yeah. And there's several novels, actually several novel series that I was working on that I had huge plans for, and I just slowly but surely I realized that even if I do get these all written down, there's no guarantee that they're good. Like trying to read them was like super difficult because, I was just so blatant. It was more like, I don't know if anyone's ever read stage blocking for a play where it's literally just, um, you know, it's written out what the lines that the character is, and then in between those sections, it says like move to this part of the stage. You know, I there was no like there wasn't a whole lot of visual imagery. A whole lot of illusion or like fun play to the narrative of like describing the story as it goes. It was literally just like paragraphs of um, dialogue and then just jumping to the next person talking, um, and it was very difficult to sort of try and make my you know dream a reality, to my visualization of this come to life and be able to be readable. um and I'm still at the point where there's just so much to write that it's a little overpowering. Like there's just so much to do, and it would take so long, and it just feels like there's other things that would be better spent my time working on and whatnot, because there's just hour after hour with like nothing to show. With at least with drawing, it feels like you've made something. It's like there, you can see it. uh you can sort of get done quicker, to an extent. Like it's easier to draw a portrait than it is to write a novel, basically. And I want to write novel series, so it's like, ah, you know, I mean, it's fun, and honestly, writing stories is probably one of the first things, and honestly, probably still is one of the things that gives me legitimate joy. Writing is like one of the few things that actually feels fun to me. You know, a lot of the other things that I do, I just sort of do to get a sense of accomplishment or to please other people. I get some sort of enjoyment from that. But there's a whole lot of things where people will do stuff for fun, for themselves. And I don't know how to do that. You know, I've spent so much of my life, hiding away or, basically just, I don't know. I've just sealed away so much stuff, or like not spent a whole lot of time exploring or being willing to, try stuff and whatnot. So it's really hard to say like what kind of person I am. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah. But basically, um, I went off on a tangent. I'm trying to remember how to get back. Um, oh, I was just writing in high school, and I basically put down drawing and everything. And then when I graduated high school, I didn't know what to do or where to go. Going to college, I knew that I wanted to be a story writer. I knew that I had the ideas. I had the drive. I had something that I hope is interesting, but I think there's just like so much there that I think it's very cool. um I haven't really been able to share too much with it. um so trying to go to college to be a writer didn't seem plausible, especially because I wanted to be a creative writer, whereas they would probably just teach me about grammar and whatnot that I could learn myself, and it sort of comes through experience more than anything. But also, there's not a whole lot of creating writing classes. It's just sort of teaching how to be, uh, a writer in the sense of, um, you know, uh, like official report writing or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, basically, um, yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but basically, I didn't want to go to college to be a writer, so instead, I did it to pursue art, again, general arts and whatnot, because when you go to college, you have to pursue your degree, and there was like so much of school that I didn't understand that I just sort of went along with, um, and going to college, you have to be completely in charge, and nothing could prepare me for it. It was school was rough, and it was more than I just didn't enjoy it, but it was bad for me. It really was. But going to college was so much worse. I you know and trying to do the bare minimum classes, to get a degree and whatnot, there. And here's the biggest problem with like the learning system is that they don't care what you know. They just they just go through the motions. They say that people that have a degree are more likely to get a job, but I feel that has less to do with the degree and more with the people that had the ability and drive to go through school and get a degree. Those are the succeeders. Those are the type of people that can actually get a job, you know. So when you put people through the ringer and make them have to get all these achievements for, a variety of different classes, because, it's better to have them know about a bunch of random different stuff, just to hope that they'll be able to find something that they can use later on in life, rather than having them actually hone in on a skill, you know which, you know by some standards makes sense, because if you pursue, just being a scientist, and then you grow up and realize that you just can't be a scientist for whatever reason, and then you have to learn how to be something else now. I can see that how there's problems with that, but I don't know. You know, I don't like to nag, or go off on something. I try not to discuss something that I have a negative opinion on if I don't have, uh, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but I feel like if you can't do criticism that isn't constructive, then you shouldn't spend your time worrying about it. I try to make sure that if I am going to talk badly about something, that I have a solution. You know, I have a reason, like, this is the reason why it's bad, because they could have done this instead. If you're just going to complain about something and not, fix the issue or help or offer anything, then you're just being, I don't know. Yeah, that's my opinion, at least. Um, but I went to college to study art, and I took a bunch of dumb random classes. I did take one class on public speaking, um, and that was a good one. Beforehand, I had been spending my free time sort of studying psychology and not necessarily philosophy, but um, some of that stuff, as well as just reading books in general. But I specifically was trying to study anatomy of the mind, how the brain works, how dreams work, what is memory, all that sort of stuff, because I wanted to decipher what was wrong with me so I could understand that and overcome it. um, I've talked about this in a previous podcast, and I could go off on that for so long. um, but the public speaking class was super helpful and interesting because it not only taught me how to you know overcome that part of my social anxiety of speaking to people, just straight up, but it also taught me a lot more stuff about being you know able to interact with people normally, socializing, and being proper, and not necessarily formal, but actually being able to communicate properly, understand people, listening, you know um, there's like the golden rule of like, when someone's talking, you need to stop talking and your eyes needs to be on them, or whatever. That's like something that's like on your mother's fridge or whatever. That's like the golden rule or something. Um, but there is a whole lot of information to that. One of the important things that I learned is, when someone's talking, you should be listening. You know, there's a lot of times where I'm not very uh, good at coming up with what I want to say. You know, so when someone else is talking, I'm thinking about what I'm gonna say next, and I'm not listening to the other person. And I feel like that's a problem because of my own mental, you know, inability. But there is like a lot of people that don't listen because while the other person is talking, they're just thinking about what they're gonna say next, and they're not being, respectful or appreciative and actually paying attention. Um, so yeah, and there's a lot of other different things like talking with your body, and all this other stuff, and you know, just a bunch of like fun little things that help me learn. But going back to you know skills and art and whatnot, I feel like that class did sort of help me understand uh, why I wasn't succeeding before, and I can't necessarily describe it super well, but I did take two classes in art. I think I did spend. I don't think I did a full year of college because I just couldn't handle it and had to drop out. But I feel like I did a semester and a half or something, something weird. Uh, but yeah, college debt is a serious thing. I remember that the first year I was able to pay for it, but the second year I was like, oh yeah, I've got this system figured out. They changed the system, where they automatically gave you a loan rather than allowing you to pay for it. So yeah, once I got out of school, they're like, oh hey, you have this loan, and also it's doubled now because you left. It's just so stupid. Anyways, um, the first art class I took, um, again, this was coming from an experience of being really good at stick figures and maybe, drawing objects and backgrounds and whatnot. But I wasn't, you know, I was never a painter. I don't like to draw with paints or paint with paints, exactly. Um, I always thought that watercolors looked cool. My sister got into painting with paints and watercolors and, you know, acrylics and whatnot, I didn't like. It just felt so messy, and once you made something, you couldn't go back, basically, or undo it or fix it, basically. Uh, and what that class taught me was, you know, about the physicalities of, you know, painting and whatnot. I think that was the second section, though. The first section taught me how to draw people, which I didn't know how to do yet. So that was super important. A lot of other, you know, science behind why stuff looks good. You know, I learned the rule of thirds in photography, which is important. So when they discussed that, I kind of knew that and whatnot. There's some other stuff too. And sort of like how stuff flows in and out and visually tracking and whatnot. Like I've learned it to the point where, you know, like in math, you may be given like a long division problem and or a multiplication problem, and maybe you don't know how to do it, but you can figure it out by doing like just straight up addition. You know, there's a lot of math that's simplified and tried to be easier and whatnot, but once you know the basics, you can figure a lot of stuff out. You know, there's not a whole lot of new stuff. Even when you get to imaginary numbers and graphing, you know, you can figure out the equations by hand. And that's what I did. That's how I survived in math. Math was one of the few subjects that I actually didn't fail because I was able to learn, progress, and figure it out. Whereas in history, geography, science, chemistry, they were always introducing brand new things that you just had to memorize. You know, I never memorized my multiplication tables, but I could figure it out. Anyways, so there's a lot of cool science stuff in art and visualizing stuff and whatnot, and that's a lot of stuff that I could go into. So I could teach someone how to draw, basically, like how stuff works, and help them find a way to figure it out for themselves. And I feel like that's a very good skill that I have, that I've just sort of always had, that I've learned that everybody's different. You know, everybody thinks and learns differently, mostly because I was different and no one understood that I was different or tried to help me because I was failing. But I remember in high school, you know, there was a room that you could take your papers to and they would grade it for you or whatnot. I actually started helping out there because I basically became friends with that teacher and was actually learning a lot of great skills in editing. You know, I'm a much better editor than I am a writer or an artist, where I just constantly have to fix my just terrible vision until it actually is legible, basically, which is kind of cool. But yeah, people would bring in their papers, and, you know, I could just sort of go through and, you know, mark if something's misspelled, or draw little notes of like, you don't need to have all of this exposition, or you could reorder this here, or this would be much easier read if you portrayed it this way. And, you know, I would write that on the paper, but also people would come in and I could talk to them, and I could, that's what really helped, is when I could communicate with them. Like, how about try seeing it this a little bit, you know, differently, you know, because a lot of the times if you have someone read their paper aloud, they'll see that there's a lot of problems with it, because when they look at it in their mind, it makes sense. But, you know, to another person, a reader or the teacher, it can be, you know, different and difficult. So, you know, trying to understand those perspectives, I can completely understand and help with. But yeah, going back to college and learning art and whatnot, I learned some skills. I got back into drawing by hand again, you know, where previously I was sort of just painting in Photoshop. And I've sort of gotten away from that, where I basically only have the skill of drawing with my hand right now. But one of the cool things that they taught was making collages. Um, my problem is that when you take clippings of something, I can never like throw the trash together to sort of make it look like something with the textures and whatnot. I always had to um, take, I cut out a lot of actual construction paper and use that as physical shapes and then put that together. So I basically did 3D art using, I would draw something and then just, make it physical basically by layering it on top of each other, which is completely not what collaging is. Because you're supposed to take like random newspaper clippings and make something uh, random shaped and whatnot. But yeah, so that was kind of fun. Then we learned how to do like paints and whatnot, and how different papers interact with each other. Oh, actually, before that, we learned about charcoal. Charcoal was interesting, and charcoal was uh, easy and difficult for me because I could see with charcoal. I've always been able to see with the grays because of my experience with shading and whatnot. But trying to use charcoal was very difficult because once it was down, it was messy. It was hard to remove, and there's different you know densities of charcoal that can make slightly different colors and thicknesses and darkness basically, especially with the type of paper. And I never was able to get to the fine detail that I was hoping for. But they sort of taught you how to simplify and get the generic gist of it basically. That perspective, how the lights hit and stuff, and as long as you get the general idea, you can do pretty well. And that basically taught me simplicity, is using something big and clunky like charcoal to draw something. Can be pretty interesting and fun. I'd probably like to try using charcoal again, but I can't think of anything good that I ever made with charcoal. And I would actually just rather prefer to use pencil, which is graphite and whatnot. Um, One of the interesting and cool things, which is the last thing I learned from that class, is how to do stylized art. Um, Basically, at the end, what our final was is to find an artist that we like and that we get inspiration from, and try to learn their art style. And that's how I got into the current art style that I am currently, which is sort of the outlined anime. Because beforehand I would have to physically shape something with shading in order to be able to see it. I wasn't able to outline things and make it simple, but now I can, which is kind of interesting. I've never been able to do that before basically. Even with like cartoons that I did when I was young, that was like really really difficult for me. But yeah, I think it's because going in between the cartoons and stick figures, those were just like straight up shapes, and then I would progress to the inanimate objects and backgrounds. So rather than there being specific outlines to those things, I would basically shade in their shape and whatnot before going on to tying everything together. But yeah, so that was like really cool. And I remember that uh, I did have another digital art class in there where they were teaching us more about Photoshop and Illustrator. Um, and again, that was a lot of weird stuff that, you know, I kind of already knew about. So I kind of was succeeding in that class, at least to start, and then when they did start teaching new stuff, I was falling behind. School was tough, and I hated it. And I just stopped going to school, and now I just work with my dad. That's just all I do. And I'm not I'm not sure where I'm going from here or what I'm pursuing, but I know that I've always wanted to be a story maker. I have these ideas, and I'm not a person that, has ideas or creativity, but I do have these stories that I want to make. I think it wasn't until, you know, I can't even remember why I went on VR chat. Like, it's such a thing that I don't know why I was attracted to it. There was probably like some friend or something. I don't remember why. If you look on my YouTube channel, I've sort of had this like very specific friend group for basically the entirety of the YouTube channel, and it was definitely after that, because it was definitely not those people that brought me onto it. So I don't know, I don't remember why or how, but I do remember getting on there and meeting people, and it was tough, and I was trying to go out there, I was trying to pursue something. I tried singing because that was basically all I had, and it wasn't really very good. you know I do have one video up on my YouTube channel of me going onto VR chat where you know everyone else was doing their own thing, and I quietly went over to the stage away from everyone else and started singing, because that's what I did. And some people would come over and listen if they liked, but this time everyone came over and started booing, throwing insults, and then this other guy came on, was obviously singing badly on purpose, and everyone was complimenting him, and it was just horrible for me personally. And after that I basically got off VR chat for a while. Forrester says, I started going on VR chat because I wanted to see what all that Uganda Knuckles nonsense was all about. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But then I met Otter, and that was pretty cool. I remember he played Wonder Song, and that was really cool. I remember that they were talking about doing like a fan dub of the movie Megamind, and this was just sort of after I had seen the Sonic fan dub, and they said that it was sort of like that. And I just think that's cool. That's something I'd want to be interested in, but they had sort of already cast everyone basically, so there was no one for me. But basically I knew that at this point in time the only abilities that I had, my skills and whatnot, were my voice, so I was trying to pursue that. When he did the Wonder Song stream, he invited people into the voice call to sit quietly or whatever until we got to a person, and we need a new person to do a voice. And I just loved doing that, and that's sort of when I discovered that I wanted to be a voice actor. And a while later things got rough. People were on less and less. I just started to feel like I was a bother. I was lonely, and there was a whole lot of just negativity in the chat, and everyone was constantly posting in the vent channel, And it was just hard for me to see that because I needed help too, and I wanted to ask for help, but I didn't know how. And I just saw all these other people just feeling terrible, and that affected me. It's not that it was toxic, but seeing these people in pain put me in pain, and I just had to leave. I had to step away. And that's sort of when a friend told me about D&D, and that sounded kind of cool. And I wasn't sure what it was about, but I did know that early in my childhood, my dad had told me about this other system used for role-playing games, which, if you don't know, RPGs are literally just improvisational, interactive storytelling, where you guys set up a scene, and then you've got the players, and they've got their characters, and you start going back and forth, building off of each other, and sometimes events happen, and you have to talk to people, and or you have to pick a lock, you have to go through a dungeon, use your skills and whatnot. It's basically talk and whatnot, but you're making the story as you go, combat or whatever. Mm-hmm. And this seemed like something cool and interesting. It did not go well because I didn't know how to make a character, and they didn't help me. So when they tried to run something with me, I didn't do well, and then basically I just sort of lost that friend, and from then on I basically left the only friend group that I have really ever had. But then I joined a D&D group. Just randomly, I felt like I needed to get back into D&D, so I messaged on Facebook and just wanted to join. I did join this Discord, and it was good to start. I wanted to play. Someone offered that there's this game. I said yes, I'd love to be in. They said, all right, I'll let you know in 5 months. I was like, 5 months? You crazy? So I started my own game. I said I was interested in starting my own game, and then I got flooded with a bunch of requests, and that's sort of how I learned how to be a DM. And I could go into this whole story spiel and whatnot, but basically the point that I'm trying to touch on with D&D is that I've got a good voice, for narration and story and whatnot, which means that I'd be good for DM. I'm also good at improv and all these other things. I love miniatures. Miniatures is one of my favorite things, like building things, like little sets and whatnot. There's all these little skills and utilities and things about me that I like and can do that all just sort of lead into what doing RPGs is, basically. Writing stories, and whatnot, but making them open-ended, like choose your own adventure, just so many things that like made me realize that D&D or whatever would be like a cool thing to pursue. And I am running 2 campaigns at the moment. I'd love to do more, but again, I don't know. It's really tough, and I used to have to spend like every single day after work just pursuing, making character sheets or monsters or items, or the rest of the story, or eventually I got this program that allows me to make the physical landscape and whatnot, which is really cool, so they can play in that, but just as I discovered with trying to be a YouTuber, there gets to a point where if you have to do it, it stops becoming a hobby and it starts becoming work. And recently Otter reached back out to me, and it's been one of the greatest things, because I've gotten back into his community and other people's community because he's rated them. I've gotten to meet such beautiful, amazing people. And I'm always about like, you need to go out there and see other people and share what you have with them, because other people are amazing and they'll have what you don't have and you need, and you'll have what they need. Like I have all this, advice, but I never follow any of it. I'm such a hypocrite. But yeah, getting back into actually being a part of something again, interacting, you socializing, even if it's just like the bare minimum, it's great for me. And that comes with streaming, because you know I can spend my life just alone in my own room, and it's just a cage, because I've got all these thoughts and ideas and they're just building up, and you know it's suffocating. So even though I feel, and I say this a lot, that talking about who I am and my problems or what I'm thinking and whatnot doesn't help me. It's just sort of like an explanation or describing, it's sort of helping someone else figure out my situation. Getting these things out there, and off my mind. I've always felt like YouTube was just sort of a memory bank for who I am and my memories and what I've done and whatnot. So making, podcasts and vlogs and, getting my ideas out and onto something real and tangible has always been a good idea for me. Writing and drawing, it feels good to make something, and get that sort of my me for other people to experience and see. I have so many words to say that I know affect people and help them, and a lot of it I feel like I do reuse material sometimes, but I want to make sure that at least the things that I do say, um, you know, does still reach people, basically. So having this stuff out there, even if it's just, minuscule, at least it's out there and people can still find it and listen to it again. Because these things aren't just going live on Twitch to be lost forever. They are going up on my YouTube once they're done. So that's good at least. But I need more water. Hold on. Sorry, I have not been drinking nearly as much water as I should be. Um, I've been home alone for this week, so I've been riding my bike into town, which is, a lot of physical exertion that, isn't normal for me. So I've been needing to, keep hydrated and whatnot. So like coming home and talking a lot, wears out my voice and I need water and whatnot. But, also probably sitting down isn't a great way to keep my muscles hydrated and keep them from locking up, basically. Fun little, tidbit for those of you interested in working out or lifting weights. Make sure you're staying hydrated, electrolytes and all that, as well as, proper sustenance and food, because you are working out stuff and whatnot. You know what they say, hydrate or dihydrate. I don't know what that means. But also make sure that you stretch once you're done. I remember the first time that I went, I did weightlifting class. I don't remember what it's actually called. But I lifted weights the first day. It was like super cool. It was like fun. I woke up the next morning. I was just so stiff, and I was like, how on earth is everyone still alive and working? And it's because I didn't hydrate and I didn't stretch afterwards, because I had just worked out a whole bunch of stuff, and then my body basically locked up because it needed to heal. It's in moderation and whatnot. But yeah, make sure you stretch after doing physical activity. You see a lot of the sports people do it. I don't know. I don't remember where I was at, other than I'm back now, part of community, the world. I'm starting to reach out to the world and interact with the world, even if it is just me, talking into the void for someone to look at later. At least it's something. At least I'm starting. I don't know. At least I'm starting to get out of my shell. I'm starting to explore new things, which I really needed in my life. And I think now at this point, all I really need is company, basically interaction with people more. I'd love to have people on the podcast, but at least for now, I'm fine with just talking about myself. There's a lot of me to go around, and honestly, I would be the worst person to have on a podcast because of how much I talk. I just talk too much. I just ramble and go off on tangents. I just talk. I would be the worst person to invite onto a podcast, unless you just wanted me to talk and explain. If you just had run out of content and needed someone to fill, then I'd probably be good. But I don't know. Well, it's pretty late. We've almost gone for about 2 hours now. I could continue tying in with more small details and whatnot, but I think this is also a pretty good sort of end before trying to pick something else up. And I don't want to pick up anything else sort of random, but I did sort of discuss the general of my history with trying to learn and pursue art. I've always wanted to be an animator, make stories. I always thought 3D animation was cool, but that's a whole lot of math and software trying to do. But yeah, there was a lot of little things that probably could have helped me pursue what I wanted if only I had gotten the right nudge in the right direction, support when trying to pursue things. but we don't dwell on those what ifs. It's just sort of interesting to kind of see that, and it's because of that I see that people need help. Actually, that's a pretty decent point to show is you know I I don't follow a lot of my own advice. I have all this like good advice because I know what the wrong thing to do is, and I'm trying to tell people and support them. People like Otter. Otter's about my age. He's a little younger, but like someone like Goblin, who's half my age almost or nearly. Um, I really want to support them. I don't want to say like because I'm older and they're growing up, but they still have the chance. They're still in the position that I've been through, and you know, I don't want them to have to go through what I did or what I have. Basically, I want to be able to help support them so they don't have to experience what I did. Basically, but it is hard for me to sort of follow my own advice, mainly because I only know that advice because of my experience and what I've gone through and whatnot. And but I'm also learning new stuff by interacting with those people, which is good. I think I will end the stream. I'll probably go get dinner. Maybe I'll chill. I don't know. I probably will hop back on and play something. I'm not sure what though. But let's go raid Otter, cause why not? Either that or we could raid Virgo. She's playing Battlegrounds. Otter's playing Splatoon. Let's go raid him. Oh, he's down to 36 viewers. Goodness. Yeah, Otter's struggling. Virgo doesn't do this as his job. Otter does. So let's go raid him.